Oh, that's not what we want to see. There we go. Hello and welcome to Season of War. Tonight it's middle of the afternoon. This afternoon, I'm excited to be talking a little bit about my recent run at Summer Slaughter. If you've been paying attention to the channel lately, you'll note that Carl and Ridge have both done their recaps already this week. So I thought it was about time. Actually, that may have been last week. Thought it was about time for me to finally do mine. Talk about my first GT with Sylvaneth, actually. Taking my first AOS army ever out to my first event, or first GT with them ever. So, gonna be some stuff to unpack there. But, as always, just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who is joining now or watching this back in the future. I appreciate your time and energy, and even bigger thanks to our premium members who are the backbone of the channel, again, supporting everything we do. But enough of that. Talking about Summer Slaughter itself, this GT was 102 players, so it was definitely a good size. Good mix of armies from across the the meta. Lots of really solid players, so it was gonna be a fun time regardless of how the tournament went. But yeah, I guess that's a little preamble about it. I'll just jump into talking about my list. So as I mentioned, I was taking Sylvaneth. I'll try not to go too deep. I'll go deep into my list. First things first, I took the Glade Heartwood. I was basically deciding between Heartwood and Gnarlroot, which seem to be the two most common ones. I like them both. Heartwood, I think, is a little less dependent on magic, at least in my build, which was nice because I knew running into someone who could shut down my magic would be really tough, right? They can shut down the army pretty easily if they can turn off all your spells, but hopefully we wouldn't run into that. But if I did, again, Heartwood was a little better for that. It also was much better at CP conservation because you don't really, or you're rarely doing all-out attack, so you just have more CP to work with. Not that Sylvaneth is super CP hungry, but it just lets you do your all-out attacks and defenses and inspiring presence without kind of any major trade-offs. So I do like that about Heartwood. My grand strategy was No Place for the Weak, which is a common one, but definitely not the most popular. This with No Place for the Weak, you have to kill the enemy battle line, and it can be a tough one. Actually, I was banking on the fact that none of my opponents, or not none, but that hopefully I would run into some opponents that had like minimum battle line, and I would get that one pretty easily. Unfortunately, I didn't run into anyone with minimum battle line, but I still managed to get my grand strat 4 to 5 times, and nearly the 5th as well. But we'll talk about that with the games. My Season of War was the Dwindling. So this is the reroll cast, probably the most popular one. I don't think I've built a list yet without taking the Dwindling. There are some other decent options as well, but it's just the reroll. And a magic dependent army is very handy. Getting to my leaders. So I will start off with my Arch Revenant, who is my general. You'll note I do not have a Warsong Revenant here, so that's definitely one of the staples in Sylvaneth lists is the Warsong Rev as your general with Spellsinger. And I, for a couple of reasons, diverted from taking the Warsong Revenant, which actually felt nice because it freed me up to take other command traits and artifacts and kind of do some different things. When you take the Warsong Rev, you kind of feel like you have to build into him. And yeah, this was just kind of nice again. Warsinger is +3 movement in an aura, fully within 12 of the general, which is great. As I said, if someone could shut down my magic, it helped me get, with a little extra movement. And then he had Arcane Tome and Regrowth, just for another cast, because why not? It also, with the number of casts I have, meant I could probably get a Wildwood every time. So that was the goal behind the Arcane Tome, because Lady of Vines wants to cast 2 specific spells each turn, and I still want to get trees out. But yeah, then is the aforementioned Lady of Vines. I've gotten a few questions about her. Just over the course of playing her and through the tournament, and taking her into a bat rep previously. The Lady of Vines is good. I don't have anything bad to say about her, other than she's probably not quite the optimal pick. My buddy Mike Vaginos, who actually went 5-0 and came third at this event, was asking me about it a couple days ago. And the Lady Vines, I have nothing bad to say about her. She's got some cool tricks and tools, and obviously her spell's great and the summon's great. And having a War Master is great in case my general goes down, especially because he's only 5 wounds or 6 on the Archrev. So I liked the Lady of Vines overall. No pluses to cast. You can't do the Arcane Tome and Spellsinger, which is the main loadout. Being that she's unique, so not quite the optimal pick. I originally had the Warsong Revenant in instead of her, but if you've seen my Lady Vines on the channel or Twitter or anywhere, I converted her up, and I just was super happy with my conversion, so I really wanted to get it on the table. I don't think through my 5 games, to say she had an impact for sure. Like this is where I wouldn't say she's not a good pick. Might not again be the super optimal one or optimized one, but she didn't let me down at any point really. She's decent in combat, which was helpful at times, where the Warsong Revenant isn't, and yeah, has some good tools. So no complaints about the Lady of Vines. I don't think in my 5 games there was really any moment where I was sad I had her instead of the Warsong Revenant. So that's not like a super exciting endorsement. But it was nice that I wasn't. You can take her without feeling bad about it, which is as much as you can hope for. Do you want to say hey to everybody in the chat? Jeremy, Dean, Olivier, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining today, all the way from the UK. Yeah, Olivier, I agree. Like the Lady of Vines, she's not super great. The ward spell can be super impactful if you get it off, though it doesn't necessarily play super well into the Sylvaneth playstyle, because it's like you're already super tanking in a lot of ways, and you're already playing the avoiding game in a lot of ways, so you're not necessarily like needing it to mitigate a ton of damage. It's not like you're like marching to the center of the table and accepting charges with this army. But to continue the list talk, then my 3rd hero was a Battle Mage of Gur. You'll have to excuse the list. The Battle Mage cannot take a spell. That was my mistake. I realized it, or who was it? Owen, actually. Owen told me right before the GT started that he had made the same mistake. And because they are allies, they can not take unique enhancements, which means they cannot even take the universal spell lore spells. So that was neat. And, well, not neat. I couldn't take Levitate, but the Battle Mage was neat because you get +1 to cast the War Scroll spell, being that it's a Battle Mage of Gur, and we're fighting in Gur. And the spell is +2 run and charge. Which again is just another redundancy for getting the modifiers to charge, which our army wants to do to teleport through the woods, strike and fade. Yeah, so that just again redundancy there, another spell cast, which was good. Even if I didn't need the +2 run and charge, could throw out a Mystic Shield or Arcane Bolt or something else. Jeremy says, if you get it off, it's always a risky strategy to build. Makes him hesitant to go Lady of Vines. I agree. And that's kind of why I was hesitant to take her. If talking to our guys like Ridge and Carl on the drive down, and I'm sure they heard me say it like 10 times that wasn't super confident in my list for a couple reasons. She was one of them. But I was definitely, every time I have had her on the table, which is only with the GT and the 1 bat rep, like 6 or 7 games now, I've never been disappointed. you can't depend on that spell, but having it and getting it off can be a huge like game swinging moment. So it's kind of one of the things where it's like it's a nice to have, not a need to have, where you have to play it like that. But again, if you're not dependent on it, then you're not sad if it doesn't go off, and you're just laughing if it does. And you can definitely like change your play accordingly at times. Otherwise in the list, I have, being from Heartwood, I have Kurnoth Battle Line. And so I have a unit of 6 Kurnoth with scythes and 2 units of 3 with bows. And then a unit of 10 Tree Revenants as a 4th battle line option. And this was another choice where I wasn't super sure which was the right way to go. I know obviously the 2 or 3 by 5 Tree Revenants are great at teleporting, but I've also had games, as you've seen if you've watched our Sylvaneth and Skaven game on the channel, that the Tree Revenants, they were in Bounty Hunters here, could absolutely slap if I ran into some Galatian Veteran units, which I did at different times. And namely, I took them for the Night Haunt matchup, because I'm really worried about Night Haunt, because my scythes are my primary, combat unit, and their output is severely diminished against Night Haunt. Where with the Tree Revenants, and I also have 3 Seekers in Bounty Hunters, both those units become very capable of killing a unit of 10 Blade Dice Revenants reliably. So it was kind of for the Ghost matchup. Just so happened out of 102 players, there only ended up being like 2 or 3 Night Haunts, which was, I mean, fine. I don't want to play them, but didn't end up being worth optimizing or tailoring to that matchup in this case. But obviously, you don't know until afterwards. And we're seeing the meta shifting with more Night Haunt, I think. Season of War GT is this coming weekend, and I think lists went live this morning. I think Zach said we had like 7 or 9 Night Haunt players. I think it was 7, because it was like just over 10%, because we have 60 some odd players right now. So that was kind of the decisions behind that. Olivier is asking about drops. I'll answer your question in a second, or follow up. I then had a unit of 3 Revenant Seekers. Again, I had only played 1 game with the Seekers before this, and they had done nothing because I just kind of misplayed them in a practice game with Zach, and he smashed them. But I wanted to bring them. I'm still felt like I was testing and exploring the Sylvaneth book, and compared to I came into this event with maybe 5 to 10 games with Sylvaneth, compared to when I was playing the new Deepkin book. I probably had 25 games in the first month of playing that book. So I still felt like I was exploring the book. The Revenant Seekers I knew were just going to be awesome for bringing back Kurnoth, bringing back themselves, giving me a little bit of a speedy threat. Also in Bounty Hunters, so good at stabbing Galatian Veterans, and they're pretty hitty on their own. They're comparable to Kurnoth with scythes. You just can't get them to a 2-up to hit because they start on 4s. Though in Heartwood, it does really help, being that, again, you all have 3 targets that you're always +1 hit against. So it lets you, both those units can be +1 hit, and then you could potentially use the Archer Revenant to give one of the units +1 attack as well, which is just great to, now that we can no longer stack command abilities, and it lets us get around it. And then I had Spitesworm Hive. That's an obvious staple for +3 move and charge, and the spell, so good. You can also use it defensively in your own turn. I'll talk about a couple little tricks and reasons for things like the battalion. So I had Bounty Hunters and Battle Regiment. I only put 2 units in Bounty Hunters, being the Revenants and the Tree Revenants and the Revenant Seekers, because I wanted to stay as low drops as possible. So I stayed at 3 rather than going to 4, just to outdrop all the 4 drops. And I actually think I ran into 3 or 4 drops and got choice in all of them because of that. Meant my Kurnoth with scythes weren't in Galatian, or weren't in Bounty Hunters, but they already can kill Galatian Veterans pretty well, so I wasn't too worried about it. Yeah. So I think though, to answer Olivier's question, talking about focusing on being a one drop. So I was three drop here. I don't think it was game breaking. Now I got choice most of the time, so I don't think you have to be one drop in Sylvaneth. Um, it's nice from a tactical standpoint, depending on your matchup, and this is something that I definitely did not utilize to the fullest. With the new GHB, it is so impactful to on different missions, whether the prize of Dalit, where you're activating if you do second the objectives, or you're choosing proving grounds. That is very impactful and definitely something I didn't fully utilize, or I feel like I could improve with in my play. Was kind of playing around the that mechanic a little better. Just gonna do this, so there we go. So I think one drop is still great because you can give away turn, deny the opponent's doing stuff, but also just choosing proving grounds. I think is actually very important for Sylvaneth in hindsight, because going second lets you even if it's not affecting you right away or you're not denying points, it lets you choose the proving ground, and even just using it to deny your own objectives being chosen later. So I found that that's something, and we'll get about it in the games, that if I could have done better, and wasn't something I was thinking about as much as I should have been. Again, the bounty hunters, especially, or sorry, not bounty hunters, proving ground, because I am very low on Galatian veteran units here. Obviously, only having the one. Yeah, so that's that. Two other little tricks I just want to mention. That again, just kind of, I mentioned my first couple games with the Revenant Seekers. They are great when you, as another redundancy for lessening your charge. And the way you do that, obviously, they have the ability at the end of the movement phase to bring back a model wholly within 12. Generally, you're using this on your Kurnoth or themselves. But the reason this is great is because you can use the teleporting between the wildwoods or overgrown terrain with something like your 6 Kurnoth hunters, or if you can only do this if they have casualties, so let's say 4 or 5. I did this very often though. You teleport this unit, and that's the end of movement, and then you make sure you teleport them into range of the Seekers, so they can then bring back a model, and with the Kurnoth base and outside of an inch, you're basically getting +3 to your charge, or 3 inches closer to your charge target, by doing that at the end of movement. So Revenant Seekers, like, just kind of realized that in my first game at the GT, that I would have that was kind of a play that I could set up, and that is just another way, if you don't get your spells off, to still get modifiers to the charge. Nothing's super reliable on Sylvaneth because it's still reliable, but it's on a 2-up to get like Spite Storm Hive after having to cast a spell, 2-up to get the summon, but just having different ways to help with your charges is so important in Sylvaneth. And where did I see it? Dean asked or talks about in the chat, 6 or 9 Revenant Seekers. I'm building another 3 right now. I think at least a unit of 3 Revenant Seekers, if you're running Kurnoth, is like a must-have. I'm going to be testing a unit of 6. I like that idea. It gives you a combat hammer that isn't reliant on teleporting. So you're either able to potentially throw 2 units in, or you can, if your opponent shuts off your Wildwoods by being within 3, or you're overgrown, you can still charge in with them and then teleport away. So I really like the idea of the 6 Revenant Seekers. I'm not super sold on the sub-faction to go to 9. Though I know Laurie over in the UK, renowned Sylvaneth player, is swearing by his big unit of 9 Seekers. And I think just this past weekend went 4-1 with that build. So definitely it's a build that's viable. But I think 3 to 6 are like a staple if you run Kurnoth heavy builds. Yeah. So that was a little trick with the Seekers. Um, what else? I think there was something else I wanted to mention, but I forget. Though, just with the Revenants, we'll talk about this at the end. Okay. Jumping into my games because you don't want to listen to me talk about my list for a whole hour. Um, round one, I was playing a gentleman I was familiar with and excited to play against, and that's Sergio. He was part of the Tough Crowd crew, and this was my first weekend meeting Sergio. Heard a lot about him, great dude, and getting paired up with him round one. I was excited to play. I knew we would have a good game. When we got to the table, Sergio was telling me that he hadn't played with the new GHB yet, so obviously very fresh into the new edition or the new book. So he was going to have a learning, bit of a learning curve, getting familiar with everything. But just going through his list real quick, he had the Tidecaster, who was his general, and I believe, so who was his general, and then Lotan. He had the Tide Flip command trait and the Rune of Surging Gloomtide for the other boat summon. Sorry, Olivia. I'll answer your question actually at the end. Just talking about like kind of conclusion about lists and whatnot, and that's just talking about getting Wildwoods out reliably. Otherwise, Sergio had the Leviathan, so he was a Nodlar, giving it the round 3 on its bites and fins, makes it awesome. 2 units of 10 Thralls, 2 units of 10 Reavers. Super balanced list, love it. I love Namardi. This is like my kind of list. 2 units, or a unit of 2 Alapexes, a unit of 3 Morsar Guard, just giving 2 different kind of flexible options, and a unit of Black Ark Core Sailors, which more than anything were just a screening unit that gets shot first. He was Battle Regiment and Bounty Hunters, but chose 3 Bounty Hunter units, which put in 4-drop. Again, me being 1 less, giving up that 3rd Bounty Hunter, gave me choice here. In this game, I think I gave first, being lower drop. This was the 8 objective mission where you can burn them, potentially taking mortal wounds if you're close by and roll over your bravery. Gave him first. He had to play conservative because you don't want to be aggressive and don't get too close to me, but I got my teleports and charges off round 1. Struck and Fade, killed a unit of Thralls. Nothing too significant. But then turn 2 Prio came, and seeing what I was able to do with the Strike and Fade, Sergio felt a little pressured to take the turn. We talked about it after, and that might have been an okay time to just try to cut your losses, lose a unit of Reavers or maybe like the Morsar Guard, but be in a position to set up for a more impactful priority later or double. Here, coming off of my turn 1, he took the turn and was just getting into me for the first time, and for the most part, I had a screen up of Dryads from the Lady of Vines. I can't tell you, guys, actually how impactful that 10 unit of Dryads is from the Lady of Vines. It was so good at all my games. So that's one great thing about the Lady of Vines. But that definitely was a huge moment, or throughout the games, of just getting a screen up. It meant Sergio took the turn. He got into my unit of the Revenant Seekers with his 2 sharks. Killed 2 out of 3. I brought the other one back on my turn. But otherwise, everything else hit my screen of Dryads. He didn't get the charges he needed to pile in and get stuff, and I piled my Seekers away from his turtle, which could have got into them and finished them off. So fortunate. Again, I actually was set up. I would have given Sergio the turn, and again, we talked about it after, and that could have been a chance to, even if he lost a unit, try and set up for, going in the bottom of turn 2, if I kind of stretch out of my castle a little bit more, and then a more impactful turn 3 double. Yes, yeah, Olivia, you're right. It is the Dryads are on a 2+, so you will be disappointed at some point. But also the fact that it didn't come down anywhere on the board near Wildwood or Overgrown was great. that got me objectives, that got me battle tactics, and many different things. So the sad thing with Sylvaneth is it doesn't have that like guaranteed reliability in a lot of places like this, those 2-ups. But still, it was great. Anyways, Deepkin game, round 1, after Sergio's turn 2, I was just kind of in a position where now that he took the turn, I was able to kill a bunch of stuff, I got his sharks down that turn, I got his Morsar Guard down, I got 10 Reavers down, and basically left his turtle in the middle of the board and kept everything else away from it. Can't remember from there if I got priority or Sergio did, but he just didn't have the pieces anymore on an 8 objective mission, and I was just dancing around at that point. At the end of the game, I had gotten all 5 battle tactics, as did Sergio, but he did not get his grand strat. I turned 5, killed the Leviathan, which was battle line in Audlar to get my grand strategy. So killed all his battle line here, which was 40 thralls in the Leviathan. So that was great for, again, the kill battle line can be a tough one, but Sylvaneth is one of those armies I feel like does have the output to like get it. I mean, 4 out of 5 times getting it in this GT, and could very easily have been 5 out of 5. I'm happy enough with that. There's not a great battle tactic or grand strategy for Sylvaneth, I don't feel. So the final score there was 31-23. And yeah, coming out of round 1 with a win. So I was happy with that and had a fantastic game with Sergio. So can't ask for anything more. Round 2, was playing a gentleman named Pat, and he had a Stormcast Oops All Dragons list. It hammers the State Mars, so getting that 6-up ward save if he's near objectives. Also had the No Place for the Weak grand strategy. And yeah, pretty standard, I think, Dragon list, but I wasn't as scared because of the changes to Dragons. They don't have the double move, which is really the main one. So I wasn't too worried about that. Knew they would be strong and they do what they do, but more predictable. They can't all get in turn 1 kind of thing. So Knight Draconis, Master Magic Arcane Tome. He's got 4 Stormdrake and then 2x2 Stormdrake, 5 Liberators, 5 Liberators, and the Purple Sun, which was somewhat reliable when you have Arcane Tome, and Scintillating Trail was the reducing enemy casting or unbinding rules, so that helps him get his casts off. So, yeah. Bounty Hunter's Battle Regiment, again, another 4-drop list here, meaning I have dropped him. I actually took first in this one, partly because there was an arcane terrain that I wanted to kind of stake my claim on in the corner, or one of the corners, and I can play in such a way that I really do mitigate my opponent's turn. So even if I get my 6 sides in combat, teleport them out, and then I basically sat outside of his threat range going into his turn 1. He managed to make, I think, a big charge with 2 dragons, got them in. Didn't do too much, so not the end of the world. But he basically went super aggro, throwing all his dragons, running them all forward, setting them up for a big turn 2 priority, where if he gets it, he's in a good position to come in and do a lot of damage, but risking it where if he lost priority, I would be able to kind of just hit everything and probably take out most of his dragons before he has a chance to do anything with them. Age of Strategy, great question about weaknesses for Sylvaneth. I will highlight that one and make sure we cover that at the end. So Pat won priority here. Threw all the dragons in, did a bunch of damage, but my Kurnoth with sides were able to hit back and I think kill 2 dragons of the unit of 4, leaving 1 more on 1 wound. So very solid, or maybe they just barely killed 2. All in all, he threw everything in, actually managed to just barely take out my Lady of Vines, But again, had to hit Dryads with some of those units and not gotten them in right away. I think maybe the turn 1 he only got into Dryads. So Dryads, that 10 block summoned from the Lady of Vines doing what it needs to do. If you don't get that off, I still was happy to screen with my units of 3 turn off with bows. Sides can fight over top, and they're hardy and hard to take out, so not too worried about that. In the end, this was a pretty grindy game, just back and forth. The mission was the Knight's Paths, so 4 objectives in the center of each table corner. My mobility and teleporting allowed me to kind of take the lead because I had committed all his punch towards being aggressive. And then he popped down the Liberators. Mid-game, he said afterwards he was thinking maybe he did it a turn too late. Just to try and play stuff for longer. But I ended up being able to outgrind him, got units back with the Tree Revenants, the Revenant Seekers, keeping my turn off topped up. They eventually went down. I think I lost the first 2 or 3 priorities in this. Definitely the first 2. Yeah, and would have been nice to get one of those to feel like I could seal the game. Didn't happen, but still worked it out. The big thing in this, for my battle tactic, grand strategy, no place for the weak, I had to kill 8 Stormdrake and 10 Liberators to be able to achieve that. I got the 8 Stormdrake, and I killed 9 out of 10 Liberators. So the last one I was hoping would run to Battle Shock. He didn't in the bottom of turn 5. So I did not get my grand strategy here. So this was the only time I dropped it, but it just goes to show, again, that's a lot of battle line stuff to chew through. 1,700 points of battle line, nearly. And I nearly did it with Sylvaneth, so I was pretty happy with that. Mark, if you missed it earlier, I think the Lady of Vines is a solid pick. Number crunching, because she's got a little more questions of getting her spells off, doesn't have the +1 for other spells and things like that. She's solid. I wasn't sad to have her at any point in this GT or any time I've taken her, but the Warsound Revenant and building into him might be the more optimal pick. But definitely not a bad pick taking the Lady of Vines. So in the end, I got my win here. All 5 battle tactics, dropped my grand strat. Pat had done well, dropped I think 1 or 2 battle tactics though, but having won most of the priorities, actually this was super grindy game, and I only won 24-20, so very close game. Then grand strat, hurt not to get that, but that's all right. Hurt especially at this event because they made grand strategies the first tiebreaker, which I feel like would have been great in the last GHB. Isn't so much. I don't think it's the way to go, in my personal opinion, for mission packs with the new GHB, because there's such a disparity in terms of what armies have good grand strats and battle tactics or don't. Did I succeed the Lady of Vines spell in that turn 1? I did. So I got the Lady of Vines spell off turn 1 in the Stormcast game. He won priority, came into me. He actually had to over-allocate into my Lady of Vines to take her out because of the thing. It helped my Kurnoth, which were getting hit, survive better, and yeah, so it wasn't game-breaking there, but it definitely had an impact. But yeah, getting it off, I got hit by eight dragons plus the hero, and weathered the storm, so having the ward. Although I lost the ward early in the combat phase, because Lady of Vines went down first, it still helped with tanking the dragon's mortal wound shooting, which he was rolling pretty hot on. So that is what it is. But came out with the win here, again 24-20, so close game there with Pat. Yeah. So after that, we're going into round 3. I was playing a gentleman named Dan with his Fire Slayers, and he was the Greyfeared Lodge, no idea what that means. Grand strategy, Masters of the Forge. That's just have a prayer. He had 2 prayers in his list, or the invitations. Was summoning them turn 1 and turn 2. It's like, no way for me to deny it. He guaranteed his grand strategy at the top of round 2, or so round 1. So, sorry if you guys can hear the lawnmowers. Yeah, the lawn is being mowed out front of our house, so I can't do much about that. It's the condo people making so much noise. Hope it goes away quick. But yeah, so this is an example of like why I don't love the grand strats as the first tiebreaker. I don't think you should deny, like, I don't agree with comping it to like not let armies take their battle tome ones by any means, but again, it shouldn't be the first tiebreaker because of the disparity. Sorry about the background noise there. Battlesmith, bringing back guys, Rune Smiter, Rune Master, Auric Rune Father, Rune Lord. They do dwarf stuff. And he had 2 units of Hearthguard and 1 unit of Volkite Berserkers. So a 10 of Hearthguard. Sorry, those are Auric Hearthguard, 10 and a 5. And then 10 Volkite Berserkers. And then he had 2 10s of Hearthguard Berserkers, which were not battle line in this list. Which actually I think is the right way to go, because then they're not susceptible to battle bounty hunters, which I did have some bounty hunters, so that I would have liked rather than be battle line and all that. But otherwise, yeah, 2 units of Hearthguard Berserkers and the Grimwrath Berserker. And the aforementioned 2 invocations. To sum up this game, if you saw the game me and Zach played on the channel with Sylvaneth and Fyreslayers, is the first Sylvaneth game. It basically was the same game where I danced around, stayed outside of his ranges for the most part, got to go in and hit stuff, shot him from range, bounced away. Just not a great matchup here for the Fyreslayers. But look, so here though, this was where I said earlier that I could have been more optimal with the choices of the proving grounds. So I took first turn, which I think was a mistake, purely for that proving ground thing. Dan was choosing not to do it. He won, I think. No, I won turn 2 priority. But anyway, so all game I was just bouncing in, hitting what I wanted to hit, killing stuff, bouncing away, not taking hits back. Doing the Sylvaneth thing against an army that doesn't really have much answers. He can like strike first when I charge in. I think one time he killed 2 or 3 Kurnoth, but then I bring 2 back the next turn. So it, isn't a big loss for me by any means. I agree with bounty hunters in that expert. I think expert hunter is great if you have min 10s, just because it's annoying. But bounty hunters battalion, I agree, isn't super impactful. But it depends on how prevalent armies like Nighthaunt are, as well. But anyways, so what happened in this game? So yeah, I was bouncing in and out, killing stuff, definitely taking the advantage there. Working through his army fairly efficiently, but not having taken first when there was not really much downside other than the proving ground. And I should have given it away first, so I could have been choosing objectives to mark as the proving ground so they can't be chosen later, because that came up in our game. And fair play to Dan. It was great plays by him, choosing those when he did and being smart about it. But I could have not given him that opportunity. So yeah, what this game, big moments in this game. Turn 3, I had battle tactic to kill a unit. I don't remember which one it was. But anyways, I failed my battle tactic. This was the one because I had failed a 3-inch charge re-rolling with my Revenant Seekers to get in. 3-inch charge, you can't ask for much better. With the re-roll, rolled Snake Eyes into Snake Eyes. That failed me by battle tactic. And that turn also, because of the proving ground that Dan had chosen, I didn't get hold more, so only 2 points that round. So potential 3 points left on the table there. I can't control the battle tactic. Sometimes you're just the dice are gonna do that. And I don't know. Don't think there were any guaranteed battle tactics at that point. Round 4, I lost another point because Dan, or maybe this was even, I can't remember, myself not choosing the proving ground or whatever. Again, early game, I wasn't playing that optimal. I got another hold 2, so I'm down from again, if you're looking at 5 points every turn, I'm down 4 points right now. Or potentially 4 points because of just the hold more and Dan winning the prios. I think for the most part, or at least it went back and forth actually. But in the end, really disappointed that I wasn't utilizing the what's it called? The proving ground efficiently, or considering that enough in my games. I definitely felt, in hindsight and reflection, that I was too focused on killing and unit removal. Not in that game alone, just in general with all my games with Sylvaneth, where Sylvaneth has a tough time scoring objectives to begin with because they're very elite, and being efficient with the proving ground is one of the ways that you will mitigate that weakness in your army. And I could have played better and not, I tabled Dan bottom of round 5, and had only lost my tree revenants for 220 points. So like the table state was hugely in my advantage, but that one unfortunate fluke of not getting my my battle tactic and the hold more those 2 turns, because also this was on the Prize of Gallet, so not all the objectives were activated. So maybe I was getting hold 1 and hold more, but not hold, I don't know, whatever it is. I lost 4 points there. He had a guaranteed grand strat, which really hurt. The last couple turns he did win the prios, which was just allowing him to score first, even with like the unfortunate 3-up rerolling charge. Not getting the proving grounds to my favor or advantage. Round 5, if I win any, that prio, I kill stuff before he has a chance to store any battle tactics. None left for him on his turn. He won prio, so he got to store his battle tactic, and hold 1, hold 2, and more. Again, even if I win that prio, I can still get the win. If not, I do not, because he just gets to store first. As Adam and Thomas saying, talking about proving ground, it's so impactful. I think it's an amazing mechanic. I think, in hindsight, as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't as practiced with this army as I normally am going into a GT and would like to be. So I felt I was too focused on like the gameplay and like the target and unit removal and trades and all that, which is important, but it wasn't. I was too focused on like, it wasn't an army I was super experienced with yet, so I wasn't playing the army wasn't smooth, or as smooth as it should be, or I would like it to be, which meant that took away focus from the external variables like thinking about the proving ground and whatnot. So again, I had choice here. I believe I had choice here. I could have given away first so that I can choose proving grounds just to deny them later. Stuff like that. I think little things, but that's how you learn, right? I was kind of coming into this knowing I didn't have a lot of experience with the army, and that's just how, that means you're gonna have to be learning at events. It's not ideal, and it means you can lose some games that you could have won because of silly mistakes or things like that. As we saw here, fair play to Dan. Dan did everything he needed to in a bad matchup. Scored 5 points every turn, and well, he had the guaranteed grand strat, but got his grand strat. So, yeah, he did everything he needed to, and coupled with the failed 3-inch charge and not getting any of the last couple priorities to like seal the game, it allowed him, he put himself in the best position he could, and I can't nothing. It is for me, I'm like, well, I can't be mad at this. Like, I'm never upset, but like it's like it was in my hands to some degree. With a little luck at the end, or the 3-inch charge, it could have been sealed earlier, but that's just how games are gonna go sometimes. And yeah, you just gotta live and learn. I always say unfortunate that has to happen at events. You want to get that practice out and learn those things before it gets to events, but sometimes you don't have time to get the practice games in. Oh, hey, Dan. Dan's in the chat. Shoutouts. Yeah. Appreciate it, Dan. It's great playing the Fire Slayers, and it was a tough one, but very well played by you on the, with the proving grounds and just making sure you got your battle tactics, and at that, mid-game, you turned your attention from trying to kill stuff to just scoring, and that's the way to play. And I was, unfortunately, not in the position that I wanted to be in. But I know sometimes, hey, that's all you can do is put yourself in the best position. And if it comes down to dice, they fall where they do, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I wasn't disappointed for sure to lose a game that was very winnable, or a matchup that was very winnable. That's disappointing, but it's like, can't do much about it. I mean, you can learn from it, which is what you gotta do. But yeah, that was my game 3, and then game 4. So that was day 1. Disappointing way to end the day. But as you would have seen, both Carl and Ridge were on 3-0. So as a team, I was super happy. We were 8-1 as a team at the end of day 1. So like, that's amazing. Super great, great start to the tournament. Great first day. And yeah, set up for day 2. Day 2, I got paired into a gentleman named Matt Obringer with Skaven. He had a very similar list to the one I played against with Ridge. Actually on the same mission as I played Ridge against, so similar to the Fire Slayer one. So I knew what this list did. He's got Thankful, he's got a Master Molder, he's got a Vermin Lord Warbringer, which is a Combat B6, 2 Grey Seers, 2020 Clan Rats, and 4 Rat Ogres. And then he had 10 Plague Sensor Bearers, which with a Warp Grinder, which were a nice deep striking threat. What this build was doing, and this was just before the FAQ, so it wasn't yet confirmed that he couldn't do it, was buffing up the Rat Ogres with +3 to charge, deep striking the Plague Sensor Bearers, getting big charges, and then using that whatever the Rat Ogres with their +3 charged as the rest of the charges. So super aggressive list. Thankful wants to like teleport with the Laosh on the Soul Seeker to deep strike, or not deep strike, but teleport, move again, and then roast stuff with his flamethrowers. Turn 1, I took it again here just to get on. This is a hard one for me to hold more on if my opponent goes first. So I wanted to make sure I was scoring at least that turn 1. Yeah. Yeah, so that the +3 is now with the Skaven ability to like count their runs and charges as from the first unit for all the other units. It's now unmodified, which is how it should be, how it should have been from the start, but wasn't worded that way to begin with. So, there was, is what it is. It's, Matt was playing the rules as they were in the book, so no problem with that until they are clarified. Yeah, I put my tree revenants on one corner. This was the in the presence of idols, so 3 diagonally opposite to the deployment, perpendicular to the deployment zones, corner to corner. And I put tree revs in one corner, dryads in the other corner, tighten the objectives, trying to bait Thankful to one corner or the other to kind of pull him out of the way. He didn't get Laoshan off. I think I unbound at turn 1. I also had Arcane Terrain. And he sent the Vermin Lord, Warbringer, up to one corner, basically pulled him out for most of the game. So I was fine with that. And one turn 2 priority got in for the first time in, at the top of 2 with Thankful. And the Rat Odors needed like a 10 or 11-inch charge. And with +3, they still didn't make it. So he kind of like went super aggro, didn't get the charges, then couldn't get the Plague Sensor Bearers in either. So that was unfortunate for him. Left basically his whole army standing in front of me, as I hoped for, having taken first and opened myself up to the double. But again, turn 1, I was outside of all threat ranges of all gnaw holes and everything, and zoning them out with my Delation or my tree revs and dryads. So yeah, turn top or bottom of 2, I kill Thankful. I shoot a bunch of the Plague Sensor Bearers, and I kill the unit of Rat Odors who do not come back from the Master Molder. And from there, it was like, okay, that was too devastating of a blow to come back from. And Matt was just playing for points at that point. Came down to, what did it come down to? Yeah, just from that mid game on. Sorry, yeah. So from mid game on, like we were tied, like 15-15 or 5-5-5. So it was actually 20-20 through the first 4 rounds, because Matt run 1 prio to store first, round 3 and round 4 as well. But then I won round 5 prio, sealed the deal, stored 5-1, so I was up, and denied his Grand Strat while storing mine. So final score was 28-21. So great game by him in a tough matchup as well. But yeah, it's so annoying that when you're not getting the prios to like deny the opponent's storing and they're just hanging in it. But it's a good problem to have for the game, right? Of it's not just about killing. I was killing stuff very effectively, but Sylvaneth, it's a tough time for them to store it too, especially when you got 20 clan rats in Expert Conquerors, and you kill 15, and those last 5 outstore your whole army on an objective. What killed Thankful? Thankful was, so he charged in and tagged a bunch of my turn off with bows. So he took like a couple wounds on my turn, but I think it was mostly shooting. Actually, I think it was shooting from like the bows. I didn't actually kill the Plague Sensor Bearers until the following turn. I just kind of avoided them. So it was all my bows going into them. My Lady of Vines shooting into Thankful as well. My Lady of Vines went into combat and finished him off actually for a bonus point with the idols. So it was just volume of shooting and combat. I might have had my Revenant Seekers in there as well. I can't remember. And then my turn off, my 6 with sides teleported out of combat, charged into the Rat Odors, and Rat Odors got to fight on death because of Death Frenzy. But I had given them Mystic Shield, so I was on a 2-up save, so I knew he wasn't going to do enough damage hitting me back. Because I also already had +1 hit against them from Heartwood, so I didn't need to do all-out attacks. So that means when he fought on death, I could do all-out defense. So I was +2 to save. So I was on a 2-up save against the Rat Odors. They did almost nothing, I think. So that was great. Dealing with Thanquil, shooting's definitely one way. Thanquil's like, he's not a forward ward, so you got to get volume into him. But if you have some rend, it helps to just make him rely on the ward and not the saves. But he's not the tankiest. I think it's only like 10 to 14 wounds in that range. So maybe he's 13 because Skaven. But yeah, shoot him if you have it. You want to obviously avoid him getting into like one wound models with his shooting, because that's what he can really rinse. But even my Kurnoth, I think he killed 2 Kurnoth that turn with shooting, which is on average with a unit of 6. But yeah, was pretty much that game. So 3-1 going into round 5. Again, it was sad to drop that game against Dan and the Fire Slayers. That I really should, in hindsight, I could have definitely played it better. Very felt like I should have won and would win. I think next time, cleaning up my play. That matchup is in my favor, so no excuses. But again, yeah, is what it is. Scoring's tough with Sylvaneth sometimes. But round 5, I actually got paired into Basil, so another friend from Tough Crowd. I've met and seen a bunch, and part of the guy group we hang out with at events often, and super excited to play him. But going into it, I know this was going to be a horrible matchup. Just countering what my army wants to do in a lot of ways. I played Ridge in my one practice game, I think, with a list similar to what I took to this event, which is actually, I think, going live this week as the premium game on Friday. But he played his Fangs, and Seraphon's tough because they can shut down all my magic, especially because he had Croak here, so he had Edge of the Gods as general with kind of common build, Croak, Ashloth Bearer, Star Priest, and Priest. All pretty common stuff. 30 Skinks, which are a little weaker now because they don't reduce damage by 1. But 2x5 Source Knights, which are a great screen because they still reduce damage. Unit 5 Source Guard, and a Bastiladon with Solar Engine. And then Cogs and the Purple Sun. Yeah, so that, coming into this game, I'm like, it's all about my magic. If I get 1 or 2 spells off, it's going to be really good and really give me a chance. If I don't get magic off, it's going to be really tough. I got just to jump to the end, I got 1 spell off in my 5 rounds. So Croak, I had 4 casts, he has 4 unbinds, table wide at +3 to unbind. I got 1 spell off. So that's potentially 20 spells I cast throughout the game. I got 1 off. Can't do much about that. But again, that's why I like Heartwood. I like Warsinger because I still had movement. I like the Revenant Seekers because I was still teleporting my Kurnoth, then bringing 1 back to give me a 6-inch charge, even though I didn't have any pluses to charge. So that those things were huge for still giving me play. I won turn 2 priority. He was a 4-drop. I gave him first. I got store here. Gave him first. We went 5-5. I won turn 2 priority. Gave him the turn again. We go 5-5 on the scoreboard again here. I'm killing some stuff, but not really enough. I'm not doing like my bows and sides. They're getting in, but they're hitting stuff that's reducing my damage to 1. So from 2 to 1. So not only is he shutting down all my spells, but he's cutting my damage in literal half. So being in Thunder Lizards, it's tough. So I gave him top of 2 and set up or played very aggressively in the bottom of the round, setting myself up for ideally the big double. I was trying to get into Croak at bottom of 2, and with like a big charge, I like a 9 or a 10, I could have got 5 scythes into Croak and probably take him out. I got a 7, didn't get into Croak, got into some other stuff, and then it is what it is. But I was set up for potentially a big double to then take out Croak if I win turn 3 priority. I also teleported my 10 tree revs on the other side of the board and killed his Star Priest. That's the one that gives the mortal wounds on 6s. I killed that, so his 30 block of Skinks isn't doing anything the rest of the game. And yeah, like, so I have those in his back line. They would then kill the 30 block of Skinks the next turn. So I set up myself for a big turn 3 priority. If I win it, I have a really good shot at taking the game. But it's kind of was in this matchup, I have to commit at some point, and I can't play the long game against this army. And spoilers, I didn't win priority, to no one's surprise. And Basil was took the turn, started doing a bunch of damage, just barely got into my bugs with his Engine of the Gods, and took them out. If he didn't get into them, which was super like to the millimeter, whether he was in range, if he didn't get into them, yeah, I still have a lot of play because I can teleport and bring guys back and all that. But as soon as he took the bugs out, I'm teleporting and hoping for 9-inch charges, and that's not reliable. So it's pretty much game there, and I just went for all my battle tactics and ran strategy. I got 4 to 5 tactics in my grand strat again. Drop it. The only one I dropped is late game. I had to do the 9-inch charge one from the Sylvaneth book. But I teleported units or a unit and went for the charge and failed it. Yeah, and I'm just hoping for a 9-inch charge rerollable there to get my battle tactic. Didn't get it, so dropped that one. Final score was 28-24 for Basil. Again, super well played game from him. Made it really tough for me. Didn't make any mistakes. Screened well. Played the objectives well. And yeah, I definitely, having learned from the Firestar's game, was playing like the Proving Grounds better, so I was happy with that from my perspective, and like utilizing different things for scoring, and my dryads for getting hold 1 and hold more, like round 1, round 2 with that summon, where I'm not bonus point, I don't have to risk my tree revenants to get the hold more, and I'm not super dependent on it, but yeah. As happy as I you can be. I put myself in a position to win, for a chance to win that game. With a little luck, didn't get the luck. It is what it is. Yeah. So that was game 5. So ending the tournament 3-2 wasn't what my hope was going into it. My always hope for that 4-1 kind of as my starting point. That's what I'm really, a big goal is to try and get a 4-1. I always say the difference between 4-1 and 5-2 is often just luck of matchups. Assuming my matchups didn't change, I could have won that, game 3 versus Fire Slayers and still, gone into Seraphon round 5 and had very little chance. And that, again, just kind of luck of pairings and matchups. And as we talked about in Carl's game, he went 5-0, largely on the back of Purple Sun in one game, winning a game for him that he was almost out of. So often the difference between 4-1 and 5-0 is just whether you get the luck in your games that you need to or not. But yeah, great 5 great games. Can't complain. Definitely got a lot more reps and experience with the army, which was big. And yeah, I guess those are the main things. I do want to talk. So I pulled up my list here. I'm going to talk more about my list as well as just pulling up some of the questions that have been asked throughout the event, just to cover those off. Josh, so our local pal and the head judge, lead judge for the Season of War GT this coming weekend, actually corrected me. There's 10 Night Haunt players. So that's a lot more than 10%. So that's like out of 65 or so, having 10 is pretty big. Just gonna pop through, try and grab the questions. Was the list, I assume list, missing a reliable way of creating a Wildwood? Asked Olivier. Yeah, that is one weakness. And actually 3 of my games had terrain with 2 huge center pieces, like pieces of terrain, like talking those big, huge circular or rectangular, like vault pieces, like 2 of them right in the center of the table, actually denied so much room for me to put trees down in 2 of my games. And they were also on missions where the territories were up to half, so I couldn't actually even choose them as, as the overgrown terrain for Sylvaneth. So was it impactful? Sure, for sure. And that's one risk of taking Sylvaneth to events. You're still dependent on like what the terrain is like at an event or what tables you're at. It's going to impact your games. So I got a little unlucky with some of those. Can't do anything about it. But yeah, that's what I did take the Arch Revenant with the Arcane Tome for that, 3rd Sylvaneth spellcast to try and get woods off, but you're only with Magic. The only more reliable way is with a Warsong Revenant because he gets +1. Don't think that would have had an impact in any of my games. The only guaranteed one is the Tree Lord Ancient, or the artifact. To be fair, don't love the artifact though. Don't think it's worth it. But the Tree Lord Ancient, that is like one of the internal dilemmas, or not internal, eternal dilemmas I have with Sylvaneth lists right now. Is like I can't. My mind is not made up if that Tree Lord Ancient is worth it or not. In some games, that tree is going to be super impactful, especially with the Warsong and the Warsong Bomb. I think I'm going to go back to I'm going to play that for a little bit. I've got 5 games skewing without those core pieces. Now I'm going to try a couple games with them, see how it goes. So hard to say that it. I don't know. I'm torn. It's really good having that Tree Lord Ancient Wildwood for sure, no doubt about it. But that was a potential weakness of my list, obviously, not having reliable trees. And not, against Seraphon, I had my overgrown pieces were in like my back corner, the opposite end corner over here, and then like this corner up here. So I could only teleport near that stuff. So that was a hard game, right? Different mission where I can pick the centerpieces. Great. Even if I got Wildwood's cast, there was nowhere to put terrain down because those massive centerpieces. It just kind of was poor luck with the mission that I drew there as well. Is what it is. What matchups? This is from Age of Strategy. Do I think Sylvaneth has the hardest time against Seraphon? All Seraphon is going to shut down your magic. You can't even sit outside of Unbind Rage, which you're often doing, your early game with Sylvaneth. So they're shutting down your magic, which you rely on, and then Thunder Lizards is also cutting your damage in half. Very tough game. Very tough matchup. So I think Army, like the Spell, Dom, like maybe Lumineth might be tough. Because they can also shut down your magic, and Zinch. I haven't played those ones yet with the Army, so hard to say, or I can't say for sure. Those are some tough ones, though. I think Night Haunt would be tough for Sylvaneth as well, which is unfortunate with how prevalent they are. Glad I'm not going to Season of War GT, just running it, because seeing those 10 Night Haunt players is scary. That'd be a tough one. That's why I teched into it with this list. Yeah. tough cast. I think those will be a couple of the tougher ones. What else? Yeah, Night Hunt is hard for everyone. I agree, Olivier. Yeah, I think so. So to look at this list, talking about like the Tree Lord Ancient and stuff. Actually, sorry, Grundy, I didn't see it. Just seeing your message now. Live and die by doing the casts and charges. Yeah, they do. But I mentioned earlier, there is some tricks with like bringing models back with the Revenant Seekers. I am never taking less than 3 Revenant Seekers if I have Kurnoth in my list. Like 6 Kurnoth with sides in my list. I am definitely always taking 3 Revenant Seekers. I need to bait my opponent into killing some so I get reliable charges. I'll throw them in the front lines outside of cover. Come kill a couple, and then you'll give me some more reliable charges. So yeah, what else? And Artifact, I think Arcane Tome was great. There are some builds that I have where I've gone like 5 casts or 6 casts. Like if you go Lady Vines, Warsong Revenant with Arcane Tome, and a Battle Mage that you have 6 casts in your army. I think that actually would be very helpful against the Seraphon matchup. I'm getting 2 spells off. I have a lot of good spells. You can only shut 2 down. Which ones are you shutting down? So that is one way I think to help in that one is trying to mitigate it. The pluses by just having so many casts. People don't want you to get Virtuous Harmony off. They don't want you to get the Ward spell off. They don't want you to get a Tree Summon off. Spiteswarm Hive, plus is the charge, Warsong Bomb. What spells do you want to they're all good. They're all good spells, so you want to stop them all, but if you have that many casts, it can be tough. So I want to test that out, but it's hard to fit both those in the list. Yeah, we'll see. Trade-off. This is another good question, Olivier. Satisfied with the Kurnoth with bows? Satisfied with them, yes. I think I would go with a 6-pack rather than 2x3. I don't know why. I just feel like that's a better option. There was 1 or 2 times when my Arch Revenant died, I was shooting at stuff. It wasn't the Arch Revenant died. I was shooting at stuff that I hadn't chosen as my hunt targets for Heartwood, which meant I wasn't getting the +1 to hit against those units because I want to kill screens or something. And I could only all attack one of the 2 units. So I think in that case, a unit of 6 would have been better. Also better if they tagged that your unit of bows. They're taking all 6, which are doing mortal wounds and fighting in combat. So, exactly. The 4 up to hit with the Kurnoth is bad. So you always want to be getting them on 3s, or even if you're shooting at a target like a hero or something that you did choose as your hunt target, and they have Lookout Sir. Well, if you do all out defense as well, all out attack as well, you're at +2 to hit, negating that -1. Amazing. So for that reason, I would go a 6-pack with the Kurnoth with bows. With the unit of 10 Tree Revenants, I would go back to 2 5s. That's just. I think it just comes down to matchup. If I ran into Night Haunt, I would have been super happy to have those 10 Tree Revenants in Bounty Hunters. The 5s are still great for dancing around, but I think more often than not, having the 2 units to teleport also get you the reliable barge through enemy lines for the bonus point with Galatian Veterans. That point, when you're potentially giving up points like we do with Sylvaneth by not getting hold 2 or hold more early game often, that extra point can be very huge. So that's definitely something I think I will skew towards. The bows. What I love about the bows, they're not great for their points in terms of their output, but they're a unit that's doing something every turn. If I had another unit of 6 scythes or a couple units of swords or Durthu or something, I'm still only teleporting one of my combat threats or striking fading with one of my combat threats. So I think having the 2 units of bows is, or the unit of bows, 6 bows, like they're not doing as much damage as other things that you could spend those points on, but they're doing they're doing stuff at range, and having an impact on the table in every turn. So that's why I like the bows. I am gonna take some lists, try some lists with only like, I took 3 to an RTT and did well with it in the Tree Lord Ancient Warsaw combo. I think another 3 isn't bad just for a little plinky threat. Because I do want to drop 3 to try 6 Revenant Seekers, either 2x3 or a unit of 6 as well there. Definitely solid. Yeah. Warsaw Rev is very strong. I agree, Dean. I didn't want to rely on it. And so what would happen? So the Seraphon matchup is definitely one I feared. Seraphon and Nighthaunt were the 2 I feared. This list is better than Seraphon. I had more play because of things like Warsinger. Potentially the Battle Mage give me another chance at getting pluses to charge. If I had have had the Warsong and Tree Lord combo to get the Wildwood up turn 1, I get the Wildwood in place, and he just unbinds my spell, Spites or my Unleash Spites. So against Seraphon, you're not doing that. So maybe I think I focus potentially on the bad matchups too much. And maybe that's just something I don't like accepting having bad matchups. I want to have a chance to like fight for a win in every game I play. That's why I've really always liked Deepkin, because they can kind of match up decently with everything. But the Seraphon one feels like a very, very tough game. So maybe I just accept that and try not to hope I don't play them. But I played Seraphon at like 4 out of my 4 last GTs. So hard to, they're super common, hard to avoid. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything though, unless there's any final questions. Thanks to everyone who's jumped in the chat and hung out and tried to listen and thrown in their 2 cents as well. Let's see this. That's been fun talking about the games, and it's, I wanted to 3-2 is nothing, 3-2 solid. It's a good result. It's not amazing. It's not necessarily what I was hoping for, but it's still good. You learn more in your losses than you do in your wins, so it's good to talk about. I still wanted to do the recap and all that. Yeah, so this is what it is. Lady is, everything's weak in the Seraphon matchup. Unfortunately for Sylvaneth, whether it's reducing damage, turning off all your spells. But yeah, Dean, if you got one quick question against Soul Blight, that'll be the last thing before we wrap it up. Anything, again, Fire Slayers, as I explained in that matchup, I still think I could have won. The Seraphon game is going to be a hard matchup, I think, no matter what, because the anti-magic and the reducing your damage. So that's a tough one. LRL versus Sylvaneth, I think it depends on the matchup. A Tactless build, tough. I can still do a bunch of damage to it, and he can only auto unbind 1 spell. And I think actually depends on drops too in a Techless build. I think non-Techless builds Sylvaneth maybe feels alright against, because you can still get their match off. Against Techless, if Sylvaneth out drops them, and this is why I think it is potentially going the 1 drop with Sylvaneth is better, or the right way to go. So I sit outside of 30, pass my Spite Swarm Hive, put it in a wood or behind terrain to try and block line of sight on it. And then I would do my teleport in and out turn 1. I take the top of 1. I think that's a big strength of Sylvaneth to be able to do that. Get those casts off before your opponent has anything to do about it. And you have a bunch of 6 turn off or whatever it is going into doing 2 damage. Yeah, it can be tough. I'm not. I think Lumineth is in a hard spot right now. They're definitely a good army and strong army still, but techless builds just don't have, I think, enough bodies and pieces in it outside of techless. And non-techless builds just don't have the tech and reliability. So it's tough. I struggle with my Lumineth list building lately. That's on Soulblight in general. Solid army, a good army, good not great, I would say. They're an A, A to B army, definitely not S, but there's still a lot of play in them, and they're solid. We saw Jeremy Vizier won an event this past weekend, if I am correct, with Soulblight. So good players can do well with less than S tier armies. So if you get your reps and practice in, as we saw, like top 4 going into the final round of Summer Slaughter was Fireslayers, KO, Slanesh, and Skaven. Not meta armies, but all just good players doing well with them. So that's big. You do not need line of sight to unbind spells, but you do need line of sight to dispel endless spells. So that's why I was saying, if you can do it with your wildwoods or big terrain, another quick little trick is getting your Spite Swarm Hive off turn 1, doing it without line of sight so they can't be unbound. So that's a great way. That potentially would have been my only chance, in the Sylvaneth game, or sorry, in the Seraphon game, was getting that Spite Swarm off, or not my only chance. I did have a chance, but that would have been huge if I could have got that Spite Swarm off turn 1. I had line of sight blocking terrain. I could have thrown it behind. Even though he has board wide unbinds, you still need line of sight on the end of the spell. So didn't get it off though, but that can be big. Yeah, neat little trick. And especially with the trees in Sylvaneth, you can throw 3 trees down and use that to block line of sight to your own endless spell as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, Dean, there's Soulblight still solid. I think there's play in them. They're not a meta defining army right now, but they've definitely got play. You can do well with them, so I think they're a solid army, super cool army. Yeah, that's gonna be it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this little recap. Look at Summer Slaughter wins and losses, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. We do have a battle report coming out this coming Friday for our premium members. That's one Ridge with Seraphon against my Sylvaneth testing before Summer Slaughter. And then we're also doing some live streaming this weekend at the Season of War GT. First ever time having it. Look forward to seeing a bunch of you there. And that's about it. See you soon in another battle report. Hey.